John Glenn said from his first flight, "I don't know what you could say about a day in which you have seen 4 beautiful sunsets." It was the beginning of an era of seeing ourselves from the perspective of space, looking down upon the earth, massive blue oceans, green and brown land masses, and those 2 white polar ice caps. If we think of God sitting up somewhere in heaven, then this must be how God sees us, as a globe, a sphere, a planet in outer space. It's quite an image. If God sees us this way, one wonders if God needs special things to see us in our smallness. I wonder if he has binoculars. And through those binoculars, he might be able to see Mount Everest, or even to pick out the great Amazon River, or even the Mississippi. One wonders if God needs a telescope than to see something like New York City and the 8 million people that live there. Or he needs a telescope to see the flash of an IED exploding in Iraq or Afghanistan. Or does God, who is all-knowing and all-powerful, see us in ways we cannot understand at all, and thus God sees it all, everything at once? The planets, the mountains, the rivers, the masses of people, all the way down to a child sleeping in a crib or in a hut, all underneath the eye of the Holy One. Certainly John Glenn's words as he orbited the earth, "I don't know what you could say about a day in which you have seen 4 beautiful sunsets," begins to shift our perspective as what God might see. And it goes without saying, however, that God does see things differently. At one time, according to our reading in Genesis, the beauty of the earth was marred by both human and nature. And God's creation was marred by evil. You see, after Adam and Eve were sent from the garden because they were disobedient to God, their son, Cain, killed their other son, Abel. And then Cain was sent away too. He put a mark on Cain so anybody else that decided to harm him wouldn't, so he would be protected. And generations came down through the years through another son of Adam and Eve whose name was Seth. But the wild and wonderful free will that God has given to his creatures continued to exploit the earth and each other, and even the God of heaven that we talked about earlier. To show their prowess, they began to build a tower that went all the way to heaven. We call that the Tower of Babel. But God struck down that tower, not casting people further out into the hinterland, but separating humankind by giving them each a different language. Sort of like Babel. They couldn't talk to each other. But the Babel resolved nothing. Generations continued. And finally there was so much unthinkable evil on earth that God had no place to send them and no more languages not to give them. So God, in his high throne of heaven, sent down all the rain and the flood to wash the face of the earth clean, with the exception of Noah and his family. Perhaps before the flood, one could describe God with words like omnificent, meaning unlimited creative power, or omnipotent, unlimited power and authority, or omniscient, all knowledgeable and knowing, or omnipresent, always present, was this creator God. But 40 days of watching the rain, and 40 days of a flood building and building and building, something changed. Something changed for all that creative and powerful knowledge and eternal God. And God changed. He moved from a creator relationship. When humankind can see that rainbow, we have God's signature that God will never again destroy this earth by flood. But most amazingly, when God also sees that rainbow, he will remember not to destroy us, which means all that unlimited creator power and authority and knowledge and presence will not ever be used to the detriment of creation or humankind again. 40 days of watching the earth flood was 40 days of God letting go of violence and alienating human beings and creation. 40 days of watching the earth fill up with the floodwaters. God changed his relationship with all of creation forever. A new relationship where God is in relation with each of us. We understand that in our own human way. We often reflect it in our prayers. We often ask God to use his greatness to help us suffice in that daily life that we live here on this earth. Our friend John Glenn had some thoughts about that too. When he went into that orbit 50 years ago in 1962, he carried a note in his flight suit in his pocket. This is what it said. I am a stranger. I come in peace. Take me to your leader, and there will be a reward for you in eternity. Glenn's note, a little bit presumptuous, but no more so than any of us asking God to look with favor upon us. And so it is as we live on this earth now and enter this new season of Lent. It would seem that God above realized close to the very beginning of human time that we as God's people are doomed by our very nature of free will, without somehow God being among us. We tend to harm ourselves and each other and the creation. It's a little like giving a teenager too fast a car. And we are too fast with creation and with each other. We don't mean to be so carefree. We just forget to be so care-filled. And God, since the flood, has a heart for his creation and his creatures. And such a heart that in time he sent a son, someone that looks just like us, to be able to walk among us. And he sent him the same way that he sent those flood waters, through baptism, to be washed clean. And then he drove them into the desert for 40 days. 40 days to know what it's like to be hungry. 40 days to know what it's like to be thirsty. 40 days to know what it's like to be all alone. 40 days to piece together what it's like to be a human being. And then that son, Jesus, the one we call Lord, comes back into the world among us. And for the first time, it is not only God who sees us, but God can see us as we see ourselves through all the hardships that we have. It took God 40 days of rain to piece it all together. He sent his son so we too can piece it all together and know our God.